Alright, this video is going to cover how to set up Cabinet Parts Pro to be able to produce a undermount drawer box, or a drawer box for undermount drawer slides. And we're also going to take a look at how to add the notch to accommodate for those undermount slides. And some undermounts need a hole for a little pin to go into. We're going to look at how to get all of that in there. So we're first going to start off with going to Tools, Settings, once the settings open, we will go to the drop-down box, and we're going to come down to Base Cabinet first and make sure that we have the Add Drawer Box, or the drawer box, checked. Once we have that checked, we're going to now set up the drawer box itself. So going back up into the cabinet type drop-down list and select drawer box. Come through the drawer box to see how you would like to have that set up. Currently, we are only datoing in, it does say backs, but on a drawer box, this is actually datoing the bottom. So the back is the bottom. Coming down and looking at that, we're good. I'm going to click the drawer box button, and we want to use the feature. Oh, I'm sorry, no, not in this case. We don't. We want to make this drawer box less the inside width on both sides. So in this case, when the drawer slides into the cabinet, how much space do we want from the inside of the cabinet to the outside face or outside edge of the drawer box? So for an undermount slide, 1/8 of an inch, or maybe even a little bit more room of 1/4 of an inch. So that is essentially going to make that drawer box a total of 1/2 of an inch smaller than the inside dimension of the cabinet. Selecting the checkbox to add the notch. This is the width of the notch. It is a total of 3/4 inches wide. The height of the notch is 1/2 of an inch. The notch inset, that is inset from the edge, we'll see all this when we nest out in the drawing. And we are also going to check a option to add the notch hole. Up from the bottom, this is the distance that hole is going to be up from the bottom to the center of the hole. Then inset from the left or right side of the hole, which is 3/4 of an inch, and the total diameter of that is going to be 197. So we will save those settings. We will close. We'll come back in and change a few things after we see what effect those setting changes have made. So now we're going to select the base cabinet. We do see that we have the drawer box checked. Enter in the size of the cabinet that you would like, selecting Add Cabinet, then Nest. We now have our drawer box for that particular cabinet. And here is the notch that is set on a layer that's called D-notch. We'll see how that name is applied. And also we have the 5mm hole here. We'll go back and take a look at that too, just pointing that out for now. There is a way to order these, and there will be a follow-up video or another video on setting up toolpaths and getting the order correct. But we do have to set up toolpath template for this. So there is a drill 5mm. I'm going to have and want both of those to be the same type of toolpath as I have for that. So selecting that first changes and updates all of the parameters here, then clicking back up to the 5mm, setting a checkbox to include that in the nest or in the calculation of the toolpaths, and click Save as Template. The D-notch is one that I want to have cut on the inside, so I'm going to do the same thing. Select the toolpath that is already set up for operations for cutting on the inside, then coming back up, selecting the D-notch, add the checkbox, then coming down and clicking Save as Template. Once that is created, you could select calculate and it will calculate all of the toolpaths for that. The calculate button does not have to be clicked prior to saving the toolpaths. I'm just selecting that so we could see what we get and what it looks like. So we could see that we have an inside cut around the rectangle or the square for that notch, and then we have a drill point for the center of that hole. There are other videos that explain more about the toolpathing. This video is mainly covering the location and the placement of these holes here. So let's just take a look, a couple distances we're able to check. So we could see from the outside edge in is that 0.4 inches plus the dimension of the sides. That is the location of the drawer notch location, and that is to the center. So let's go back into cabinet parts. We're going to close the nesting and we're going to modify and move some of those options around. So I'm going to make the changes to the cabinet that we have entered in here. These are not permanent setting changes. This is only going to affect the cabinet that I right-clicked on. So changing settings. I apologize. We do have to change the main settings since it is a drawer box that we're changing. So I'm going to go to File, New, come back into Tools, into the settings, and then select the drawer box from the drop-down, cabinet type drop-down. With that selected, I'm going to modify and click drawer box. Remember we saw D-notch. That is where that name came from. You could change the name of that if you would like. And let's make that width, let's go 1 3/4, just so we could see a large change to see if that is in fact what we are doing. We'll do the same thing down here. Let's make that a inset by 1 1/4 as well. Make that settings change. We'll close the settings. We will then add a new cabinet. It is still there. Add that cabinet to the list. Calculate nest. We now see that those drawer notches have gotten a little bit wider, and that is the inset is from the center of that rectangle. So you're able to play with those numbers a little bit, set them, nest it until you could visually see where they are or what they want. You could use the distance tool. There is another video that you could watch that shows how to use the distance and different methods within PartNester to verify part location. So we could see that we have a dado for the backs or for the bottom of this drawer box. Let's take a look at how we set up a dado or increase or the inset for that dado. So going back into Tools, Settings. Going to select the drawer box from our drop-down box. And we want to select the option for back dados, which is, again, the bottom of the drawer box. The inset, we could see here that is from the back of the cabinet or from the bottom of the drawer box up to the bottom side of the back. So if we want to increase that back width, or the inset, moving it up to 0.5 from 3/7/8. I got a double decimal there. Be careful of that. With an inset of 0.5, and we are going to change the width to be 0.75. Clicking Save. Well, let's make that width 0.5. Let's just go ahead and change our material thickness as well. So with the width at 0.5, we'll jump over into the material. So we'll close this feature with the drawer box selected, changing the material. And a quick way to change the material here, even though we don't have all of these parts here, I'm just going to do a copy and just select all of them and doing a Control V. So I did a Control C to copy, and now just highlighting and doing a Control V. Once we get all of these settings for the material thicknesses changed, go ahead and click Save. You do not want to use the Use for All, because that is going to apply all of these settings to all of the other cabinet types. We only want the 1/2 inch material set for the drawer box. So let's just double check that we have our back dado material or dado width set at 0.5. We have an allowance. So even though 0.5 might be a tight dado fit, we do have a 20 thousandths allowance to compensate for some material thickness variation and such. So closing the settings. Adding another cabinet, base cabinet, to the list, calculate nest. We will now have another sheet of material that is specific to 1/2 inch. So you could use the slider bar to move over, and we could see that that is our 1/2 inch material with a 1/2 inch dado with a 1/2 inch inset for our backs to fit in there. So that is how to create the notch for the undermount slides, add a hole. We've also looked at how to change the location of that setting and how to change the inset, material, and the width of that back dado or the bottom dado. We'll now take a look at adding a dado on all 4 sides, so the bottoms and the tops of the drawer, or the front and the back. So currently we only had dados for that back on the sides of that, and it was a butt joint to the front and back of that drawer box. So I'm going to go to File, New, come back into the Tools settings. Using the drop-down box, select Drawer Box. Then we have our Construction Method drop-down box that is right here. The option number 1 is backs to fit in the sides, tops, and bottoms. Option to dado sides. We want the second option, the back to fit inset into sides, tops, and bottoms. Option to dado sides, tops, and bottoms. So with that change made, we're going to come back into our data entry to enter in another base cabinet, adding that to the list, selecting Calculate Nest, using the slider across the top to come over to our last sheet that has the drawer parts on that, and now we could see that we have a dado for the sides and the front and the backs of all. So essentially the bottom of that drawer box is now going to be dadoed into all sides of the box. We could also add dados for the front and the back. Now this is the case where we would not be able to add a blind dado. It has to be a full dado, mainly because of the top side, bottom side, which is the top face, bottom face, or inside of cabinet or outside of cabinet. If we wanted to create a blind dado on these parts, that would require a flip operation, but if we do a full dado, that would not. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Closing the settings. I'm going to go to File, New to clear our list. Going into Tools, Settings. Dropping our box down to select Drawer Box. And we are going to choose the option here for blind dados. Yes, I know I just said we can't do blind dados. That setting, or it should really be labeled blind/full dados, because we're able to modify how that is going to work over with our blind dado button. As soon as I find it in our array of buttons here, blind dado, we could enter in a blind of 0. That is the distance that blind dado is set from the inset from the front. We can't have it inset, so we're going to say 0. The width of the dado, we are going to make it 0.5, and the depth is 3/8 of an inch. That'll leave an 1/8 of an inch material there. It's a little tight, not quite what I would really want to do, but I know some do, so we'll go ahead and click Save for that. Close our settings. Add a new cabinet to the list and calculate and nest. Oh, yeah, we might not get the blind dado as I see it is unchecked there. We'll quickly take a look, and we can quickly see that by using the slider to jump over to the last sheet. And no, good, it did get selected. So we now have our dado for the faces, or the fronts and the backs of that cabinet or that drawer box to be assembled. So now we have dados on all 4 sides for the bottom to fit into. We also have dados on the sides for the front and the back of the drawer box to be assembled. So that is a few methods on how to create a couple different variations of a drawer box using undermount slides. Hopefully this was useful. If you have any questions, let me know.